At night, the Ashcroft Riding Stable changed. The air thickened. The horses shifted endlessly. Wood creaked where no wind passed. Elijah slept in a narrow room near the feed bins. He woke at every sound. He memorized patterns, which horses stamped when anxious, which went silent when afraid. He learned that fear did not always come from noise. Sometimes it came from footsteps that knew exactly where to go. The four masters visited after dark, never together, always alone. They believed isolation erased witnesses. They spoke to the horses as if to objects. They struck them for hesitation. They tested dominance. And sometimes Elijah heard other sounds, breathless prayers, muffled cries, commands whispered with desperation. He never intervened. He watched. Horses understand pressure better than pain. They know when restraint is intentional. They sense hesitation. They feel cruelty before it strikes. Elijah trained them gently during the day. At night, they learned something else. How a man's weight shifts when he intends harm. How his grip tightens before violence. How fear smells different from authority. He never spoke of revenge. He spoke of balance. He taught the horses to stand still when abused. To absorb. To wait. Waiting, Elijah believed, was not submission. It was memory. In January of 1864, a stable ledger disappeared. It contained feeding schedules, breeding records, injuries, but also notes, written in Elijah's careful hand, about behavior. Patterns. Night disturbances. Thomas Ashcroft noticed first. He accused Elijah quietly. Then publicly. The preacher was summoned. The magistrate listened. Elijah denied nothing. He only said the ledger had served its purpose. That unsettled them more than guilt would have. That winter, the horses became unnaturally calm. No rearing. No biting. No refusal. Visitors praised Elijah's work. But townspeople noticed something else. The animals' eyes followed the four masters differently now. Not fear. Not obedience. Recognition. As if they knew something the men did not. And as snow piled against the stable doors, Elijah stopped sleeping inside. No one knew where he went. Only that, on the night before the incident, every stall gate was found unlocked. The storm arrived without warning. Snow turned to freezing rain. Wind pressed against the stable walls as if testing them. The town shut itself indoors, shutters drawn, prayers murmured out of habit rather than faith. Shortly after midnight, lantern light appeared near the Ashcroft Riding Stable. For men entered separately. No witnesses. No record. Inside, the horses were already awake. Not restless, alert. Every stall gate stood open. Later investigations would insist on chaos. They said the horses spooked. They said thunder startled them. They said men panicked. But those who understood animals knew something was wrong. The stable doors were barred from the inside. The tack room was locked. The loft ladder had been pulled up. There was only one open space, the central riding ring. Wide. Circular. Like an arena. One horse moved first. A draft mare named Mercy. She stepped forward calmly, blocking the main exit. Another followed. Then another. No charge. No panic. Just pressure. The men shouted. Commanded. Raise crops. The horses did not respond. Because obedience, once broken, does not return the same way. As the men tried to force passage, weight shifted. Hooves pressed. Bodies crowded. The ring tightened. The horses did not attack. They enclosed. Witnesses miles away later claimed they heard screaming. Not from animals. From men who suddenly realized dominance was not permanent. The noise was described as confused, desperate, pleading. Horses respond to sound, but not to panic. They respond to pressure. And pressure, once released, does not argue. At dawn, a farmhand found the stable sealed. Inside, four bodies, crushed beneath layers of straw and hoof prints. The horses stood in their stalls, calm, breathing evenly. Not a single animal was injured. Elijah Boone was nowhere to be found. The magistrate declared it an accident within hours. The preacher called for silence during Sunday service. No inquest. No autopsy. No questions. The ledger was never mentioned again. The stable reopened within a month, under new ownership. But something had changed. The horses refused certain riders. And some riders refused the stable. They searched for Elijah Boone for 3 days. They checked the riverbanks. The old slave quarters beyond town. The rail station 40 miles west. Nothing. No tracks in the snow. No belongings missing. No goodbyes spoken. It was as if Elijah had never existed outside the stable, which raised a question no one wanted to ask. Who had been caring for the horses all those years? In the months that followed, families noticed changes in their children. Young boys, once eager to ride, refused to enter the stable. They complained of watching eyes, of horses that stood too still. Young girls spoke of dreams where hooves circled endlessly, never striking, never stopping. The church dismissed it as imagination. But parents stopped sending their children because the horses no longer bowed their heads. That spring, the preacher delivered a final sermon on the incident. He never spoke the stable master's name. He framed the deaths as a lesson, pride undone by nature, authority misplaced, God's order restored. And then he closed the church ledger. From that day on, Elijah Boone ceased to exist in public memory. No record, no blame, no acknowledgement. Erasure, after all, is cleaner than confession. The Ashcroft Riding Stable survived another 30 years. But accidents continued. Riders thrown without warning. Animals refusing commands. Gates opening themselves. Not violence, resistance. The stable eventually closed in 1896 after a wealthy buyer was found pinned, unharmed but weeping, unable to explain why he dismounted and knelt. He said the horses would not move until he did. Today, nothing stands where the stable once was. Just a field, uneven ground, grass that refuses to grow evenly. Local folklore speaks of horses that appeared during storms, standing in circles, facing inward, listening, waiting. Long after Ashcroft vanished from maps, travelers spoke of a peculiar sound on winter nights, hooves on frozen ground, echoing in patterns that seemed deliberate. They whispered of horses that moved without riders, circling in perfect symmetry, eyes glinting with unspoken memory. No one stayed to confirm, because memory, when carried by creatures not meant to speak, often terrifies more than it consoles. Elijah Boone's revenge was subtle. He did not strike. He did not harm with tools. He taught patience to the animals and precision to their awareness. He showed that cruelty leaves fingerprints, not always on flesh, but on memory, on instinct, on behavior. The four masters were gone, yes, but their absence reshaped the hierarchy of power in Ashcroft forever. And in that, Elijah's presence lingered, silent but unyielding. Horses remember what humans forget. They remember hands that punish and voices that betray. They remember shifts in weight and intention. And some truths, carried by animals, outlast stone, paper, and sermons. Ashcroft's tragedy reminds us, control is temporary. Memory is permanent. And the mind of a creature we deem obedient may be more loyal to justice than to command. Ashcroft itself became a study in collective silence. People moved. Businesses closed. Families left. Stories were reshaped. Preachers replaced sermons. Children learned to fear silence. But the ground kept its memory. Every field, every stone, every hollow where horses once waited holds the echoes of an order undone. Sometimes, when winter nights are long and the wind blows across empty fields, travelers report shadows moving, patterns of hooves in the snow. No one sees faces. No one is hurt. But the pattern is always the same. Circling, watching, remembering. Ashcroft may be gone. Elijah Boone may have vanished. The four masters may have died screaming. But the lesson remains. Power without conscience leaves memory. And memory, if sharp enough, has a way of reclaiming what it has witnessed.